In the frozen winter of 1944, the Allied advance in Italy had bled to a halt. The campaign was not a war of movement. It was a brutal, inch-by-inch grind against the toughest defenses in Europe, the Gustav Line. This was not a line of trenches. It was a web of interlocking machine gun nests, mortar pits, and artillery bunkers, all dug deep into the mountains and fortified with reinforced concrete. For the men of the 112th Infantry Regiment, it was a meat grinder. Their enemy was not just the German paratroopers. Their enemy was the ring stand, a concrete nest, immune to shelling, housing veteran crews manning the MG-42, a machine gun that fired 1,200 rounds per minute. The American weapon to crack these nests was the M2 105mm howitzer. It was one of the finest artillery pieces of the war, accurate, reliable, and powerful. But it was crippled by a fatal lie. The lie was the doctrine. U.S. Army doctrine was a just fire. It was precise, methodical, and taught at every gunnery school. A single battery would fire. A forward observer would spot the impact. He would radio a correction. Up 50, right 100. The battery would adjust. They would fire again. Once the shells were on target, the observer would give the command. Fire for effect. This walking barrage was logical, it was disciplined, and against the concrete bunkers of the Gustav Line, it was a 30-second death warrant for American troops. Inside the ring stand, the German NCO heard the first shell. He heard the second. Closer, he shouted. The MG-42 crew dropped their weapons, ducked deep into the concrete, and waited. They called it the Feuerwalze, the fire waltz. They let the predictable barrage walk harmlessly over their heads. When the shelling stopped, they emerged, unharmed, reset the MG-42, and proceeded to slaughter the exposed American infantry struggling through the mud and wire. The problem was 30 seconds. The solution was not a bigger gun. It was not more aircraft. The solution was a mathematical formula, scribbled on a damp Form 8 firing chart by a man with no authority. He was Sergeant Eli Vance, a pre-war statistics analyst now serving in a Fire Direction Center, or FDC. He was a chart ruiner, a man paid to calculate, not to think. But Vance saw the pattern. He knew the doctrine was a lie, and he had a theory. He called it the probability salvo. The theory was heretical. It required bypassing the entire adjust fire doctrine. Vance's goal was to make 18 M2 howitzers from 3 different batteries, Abel, Baker, and Charlie. Scattered miles apart in the muddy hills, all fire their shells on a single point, but not sequentially. They would fire so that their shells, traveling on different arcs, at different speeds, from different distances, would all land on the German bunker, Objective Rook, in the exact same second. No 30-second warning. No time to duck. No Feuerwalze. Just annihilation. This breakthrough was precisely what the army was desperate for. It was a tactical revolution that could save thousands of lives and unlock the Italian front. This creates the central, shocking paradox of the story. If the probability salvo was the key to victory, why was Sergeant Eli Vance the man who invented it, the man who proved it worked, the man who saved the 112th Infantry immediately and quietly transferred? Why was his success buried? And why do the official histories credit the very officers who tried to stop him? This is the story of the revolutionary idea the army needed, and the inconvenient truth they were desperate to erase. To understand the cover-up, one must first understand the lie that made it necessary. We must go back 6 weeks. The story begins 6 weeks earlier, December 1943. The location is a muddy, freezing Fire Direction Center tent. It is a canvas island in a sea of ankle-deep mud, pitched near the banks of the Rapido River. This is the command post for the 45th Artillery Group. The air inside is thick with the smell of kerosene, wet wool, and exhaustion. Rain hammers the canvas roof, a constant, drumming reminder of the Italian winter. This is the world of Sergeant Eli Vance. He is not a warrior. He is a thin man with glasses, a pre-war actuary from Columbus, Ohio, who understood statistical risk. His weapon is not a rifle. It is a worn Kufel and Esser slide rule and a book of logarithm tables. His job, in the language of the FDC, is to be the chart ruiner. He is the cog in the machine, who calculates the azimuth, elevation, and propellant charge for the guns. The guns themselves are superb. The M2 105mm howitzer is the pride of the U.S. Army. It is reliable, devastatingly accurate, and respected by the enemy. It is a masterpiece of engineering, but it is crippled, not by a mechanical defect, but by the book. This is the Achilles heel of the U.S. Army in Italy, the official doctrine of a just fire. The process is drilled into every artilleryman. To attack a target, the FDC calls a single battery Battery A. Battery A fires one shell. Miles away, a forward observer, or foe, hiding in a ditch, watches the impact. He radios a correction, up 50, right 100. The FDC calculates the new solution. Battery A adjusts and fires a second shell. When the FO confirms the shell is on target, he gives the command, fire for effect. This doctrine worked perfectly in the open deserts of North Africa, hunting panzers. But this is not the desert. This is the Gustav Line. This is a campaign of mountains, rock, and Tiefbau deep construction. The enemy is not a tank crew. It is a platoon of veteran Fallschirmjäger or Gebirgsjäger paratroopers and mountain troops living inside fortresses. They wait in ringstand MG-42 nests built with 2-meter thick concrete ceilings, connected by tunnels. And a just fire gives them a 30-second gift. Eli Vance sees the pattern where others see only procedure. He has watched the casualty lists grow. In the corner of the tent, by the green shaded light of his lamp, he keeps a private, unauthorized log. On one side, U.S. barrage executed. On the other, 112th Infantry casualties. The correlation is terrifying. He can see the event he is not allowed to witness. He can see the German NCO inside the bunker hear the thump of the first, single adjusting round. He sees him shout. He sees the MG-42 crew wait, unbothered, as the second shell lands closer. When fire for effect finally begins, the crew is deep in the concrete, safe, as the barrage churns the mud harmlessly above them. They wait. They emerge. They slaughter the American assault. Eli Vance, the actuary, looks at his secret log. He is the first to understand. The problem isn't the gun. It isn't the infantry. The doctrine is the flaw. The doctrine is protected by an antagonistic authority. That authority arrives 2 days later, in the form of Colonel Eris Thorne, commander of the 45th Artillery Group. Thorne does not ride in a jeep. He arrives on a horse, a throwback to a forgotten era, spattered in mud that seems to avoid his immaculate uniform. He is a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute. He is an old guard horse artilleryman who believes combat is an art, not a science. He still carries a riding crop. He enters the FDC tent, and the temperature drops. He has open contempt for this place, this clerk's office full of maps and charts. He believes the FDC has stolen the soul of the artillery, taking control away from the eyes on the ground, and giving it to number crunchers. Eli Vance, driven by the terrifying data in his logbook, makes a naive, fatal error. He believes the facts will matter. He steps forward. Sir, Sergeant Vance, I have an analysis on the adjust fire doctrine's effect on enemy survivability. Thorne's gaze is ice. He does not look at the logbook. He looks at the sergeant. Eli continues, his voice thin. Sir, the doctrine is flawed. The 30-second warning is the problem. It gives the enemy time to hide. Mathematically, we are just warning them. Eli proposes his solution. What if we calculate a simultaneous solution? All 18 guns, one time, one target, no warning. Thorne's reaction is not curiosity. It is cold fury. He doesn't understand the complex math, and he doesn't care to. He understands this as an act of insubordination. He sees an enlisted man questioning the very foundation of his army. He taps his riding crop against his boot. That is a slide rule theory, Sergeant. Thorne turns to Eli's immediate superior, Lieutenant Hobbs, a weak officer who immediately looks at the floor. Lieutenant, Thorne's voice is sharp. You are running a statistical experiment here? This is not a math problem. He turns back to Eli, his voice full of contempt. This is a discipline problem. Thorne establishes his reality. My gunners follow my fire commands. Period. They follow the book. We do not experiment with men's lives, least of all based on a clerk's arithmetic. He steps toward Eli, invading his space. You are a cog in a machine, Sergeant Vance. You are paid to calculate the solutions I send you. You are not paid to think. Do your job. The official lie is established. The problem is not the doctrine. The problem is men like Eli who question it. Colonel Thorne leaves the tent. The inspection is over. Lieutenant Hobbs, pale and shaking, looks at Eli. He doesn't argue. He doesn't offer support. He gives his own order. Burn it. Sir? The logbook, Sergeant. Burn it. Now. That is a direct order. Eli Vance, humiliated and marked, takes his private logbook, the proof, the truth of the failed doctrine, and walks out into the rain. He drops it into a burning oil drum. He watches the truth turn to ash. 2 weeks later, the ash from Eli's logbook is long cold. It is mid-December, 1943. The 45th Artillery Group is ordered to support a new offensive, Operation Sledgehammer. The target is a minor, muddy hill designated Point 121. It is a preliminary assault, a test. In the FDC tent, Sergeant Eli Vance is now the perfect cog. He is silent, he is methodical. He receives the fire plan from Colonel Thorne's headquarters. It is, as he expected, a standard walking barrage. He is ordered to calculate the firing solutions. He does not question. But this time, the assault is not an abstract statistical problem. The night before H hour, his friend, Lieutenant Mike Chen, had come to the FDC tent. Chen was a pre-war history teacher, a kind man who carried books in his pack. He was leading the assault on Point 121. He stood in the tent, sipping Eli's bitter coffee. "Make 'em count, Eli," he said, forcing a smile. "Just make 'em count. See you on the other side." Now it is H hour. Eli sits at his station, headset on, listening to the command net. He hears the voices of the gun batteries, the forward observers, and the infantry, all layered in static. Then Colonel Thorne's voice cuts through, clear and authoritative. "Commence adjust fire on target 121. Eli's hands are steady, but he is hollow. He listens to the procedure he now knows is a lie. He hears the FO call the first impact. Short 200. He hears the FDC call the correction. He hears Battery A fire again. The process takes 40 seconds. 40 seconds of warning. Target is bracketed, the FO reports. Thorne's voice. Fire for effect. Eli hears the whoosh of the entire battery firing. He knows, with mathematical certainty, what is happening in the concrete bunker on Point 121. He knows the German crew is waiting, safe, as 105mm shells churn the mud above them. And he knows Mike Chen is now advancing up that slope. A new voice breaks through the static. It is Mike Chen, his radio call sign Sledgehammer 6. His voice is calm, professional, but breathless from the charge. "FDC, this is Sledgehammer 6. Barrage is over. It was right on target. We are at the wire." There is a pause. The FDC is silent, waiting. Then, Chen's voice again. The calm is gone. It is replaced by a high, thin confusion. They're not dead. FDC, the guns didn't. They. The transmission is cut by a new sound. It is a sound that tears through the radio handset. A sound of pure mechanical violence. The ripping canvas roar of an MG-42 at point-blank range. It is followed by a single, human scream. Then, only static. Eli Vance sits paralyzed, the static hissing in his ears. He has just calculated his friend's death. The aftermath is swift. Operation Sledgehammer is a catastrophic failure. The 112th Infantry is repulsed with heavy losses. The official after-action report, signed by Colonel Eris Thorne, lands on the division desk 2 days later. It blames poor infantry coordination and unexpectedly strong enemy resistance. The doctrine is protected. The lie is reinforced. And Sergeant Eli Vance is broken. He stops thinking. He stops analyzing. He becomes the cog, Colonel Thorne demanded. But he cannot erase the memory of the static, or the sound of the machine gun that replaced his friend's voice. We move to the present. Winter 1944. The eve of the largest offensive yet. Operation Avalanche. The target is a massive, heavily fortified German strongpoint. Its code name is Objective Rook. Sergeant Eli Vance is in the FDC tent, a ghost. He is the perfect cog. He plots coordinates, he runs numbers, he does his job. He is listless, hollowed out by the static he hears in his memory. A new fire plan comes in from Colonel Thorne's headquarters. It clatters out of the teletype machine. Lieutenant Hobbs hands it to Eli. Vance. Plot the solutions for Avalanche. H-hour is 6. Eli reads the plan. His blood runs cold. It is not a new plan. It is a carbon copy. The exact same procedure that got Mike Chen killed. A standard, sequential walking barrage, this time on a target 10 times deadlier than .121. He is being ordered to calculate the deaths of an entire regiment. He says nothing. He sits down at his table. He is a cog. He will obey. Then, the tent flap opens. A soldier stands there, silhouetted against the rain. He is not a soldier. He is a boy, 19 years old, soaking wet, shivering, his knuckles white around his rifle. He is a private, a new replacement. His name is Hayes. Sarge. Vance? The boy asks, his voice cracking. Eli looks up, annoyed. What do you want, Private? This is a restricted area. They said you was the smart one, Sarge. The one who does the math. Hayes steps in, fumbling inside his wet jacket. He pulls out a crumpled, damp letter. He holds it out to Eli. It's for my mother. In Indiana, just in case. Eli stares at the letter. He does not take it. Hayes's terror makes him bold. He pushes it onto Eli's table, on top of the fire plan. Please, Sarge, he whispers, leaning in. The fellas say, you're the only one who knows why the guns don't work. They're sending us up that hill tomorrow, please. Eli looks at the boy's face. The terrified eyes, the plea, and he no longer sees Private Hayes. He sees Mike Chen. He hears the static. He hears the scream. The boy has just handed him an impossible choice. Hayes, seeing he has crossed a line, snaps to attention. Sorry, Sergeant. He turns and flees the tent, back into the rain. Eli is left alone. On his table, the official fire plan, the lie, and the letter, the truth. This is the internal conflict. This is the pivot. Option A, obey. He can follow Colonel Thorne's direct order. He can plot the walking barrage. He will be safe. He will keep his rank. And tomorrow, at 6-1, Private Hayes will be slaughtered in the wire. The attack will fail. More men will die. But Eli Vance will be a good soldier. Option B, defy. He can execute the probability salvo. He pulls his old, burned calculations from his footlocker. This is not simple defiance. This is a criminal conspiracy. To do this, he must commit a dozen acts of insubordination. He must secretly get on the radio network and contact the FDC sergeants at Baker and Charlie Batteries, Sergeant Juke Riley and Sergeant Maps Costanza, men who also lost friends at .121. He must convince them to commit treason with him, to disobey Thorne's direct, in the clear radio order during H-hour. And then, he must do the math. He must calculate 3 unique, impossibly complex firing solutions for 18 guns, accounting for wind, humidity, propellant temperature, the rotation of the earth. The risks are catastrophic. If he is caught, it is a court-martial in a time of war. Leavenworth. If his math is wrong, by a single fraction, by 1 degree, by 1 meter, he will not hit the Germans. He will drop 18 high-explosive shells on his own advancing infantry. He will kill Private Hayes himself. He is trapped between his career and his conscience. Between the book and the math. Sergeant Eli Vance looks at the letter for Indiana. He looks at the slide rule in his hand. He looks at the fire plan from Thorne. He makes his choice. He is no longer a cog. He puts on his headset. his hand trembling. He keys the restricted net. Juke. Maps? You on the net? A crackle of static. Maps here. Eli. What's up? Eli takes a deep breath. I have a statistical problem I need to discuss. H hour is 5:55. Inside the FDC tent, the world has shrunk to the green shaded lamps, the glowing dials of the radios, and the acrid smell of old coffee. The canvas roof is silent, the rain having finally stopped. Lieutenant Hobbs is pacing, his mug of coffee shaking in his hand. Sergeant Eli Vance is perfectly still. He is sweating, a single drop running down his temple. His hand rests on the radio key. In front of him are his Form 8 firing charts, covered in a dense web of equations, the math for his heresy. He has spent the entire night calculating. He has also spent it on the restricted net, whispering to Sergeant Juke Riley at Baker Battery and Sergeant Maps Costanza at Charlie. The plan is set. It is insane. It is treasonous. And they have all agreed. They are all haunted by the sound of static. The code is simple. When Colonel Thorne gives the official order adjust fire, Eli will give the real one. Execute. Probability. The radio crackles. The static clears. It is 6. A voice cuts through the tent. Clear and aristocratic. Colonel Eris Thorne. All units, stand by. H hour. Battery A. Commence adjust fire on objective Rook. This is the moment. The entire system is poised to repeat the lie. Eli Vance keys his microphone. His voice, trembling but clear, cuts across the entire command network. All batteries. Disregard. Lieutenant Hobbs freezes, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Vance? Eli ignores him, his thumb holding the key down. Execute. Probability. The network erupts. Colonel Thorne's voice, distorted with rage. Who gave that order? I said adjust fire. Sergeant Vance, you are countermanded. Belay that command. Belay. Lieutenant Hobbs, pale, lunges for the radio. Vance, what did you do? But it is too late. The system is already in motion. On the radio net, Eli hears 3 faint clicks. Click, Riley. Click, Costanza. Click. His own battery commander, who is trusting his sergeant over his colonel. Thorne is screaming for Vance's arrest, demanding the military police. And then, the guns fire. It sounds like chaos. It sounds like a mistake. Battery C, the farthest, fires first. 10 seconds of silence. Then Battery A, in the middle, fires. 5 more seconds. Then Battery B, the closest, fires. On Thorne's command net, it sounds like a catastrophic failure of discipline. But on objective Rook, 2 miles away, the laws of physics are converging. 18 high-explosive 105mm shells, fired at different times, from different distances, on different trajectories, all race toward a single point in space and time. They arrive in the same second. There is no walking barrage. There is no 30-second warning. There is only a single earth-shattering event. The 2-meter-thick concrete ring stand does not just crack, it liquefies. The pressure wave instantly vaporizes the MG-42 crews. The entire hilltop strongpoint, the mortars, the wire, the machine gun nests is erased from the earth. In the FDC tent, Eli listens to the infantry net. There is only stunned silence. Then, a new voice, a captain from the 112th, breathless and shaking. FDC, FDC, what did you do? My God, it's gone. The whole hill is gone. There's nothing left. Inside the Fire Direction Center, Eli Vance is breathing heavily, his knuckles white on the desk. Lieutenant Hobbs is pale, staring at the radio as if it were a snake. On the command net, Colonel Thorne's voice is a shriek of apoplectic rage. Arrest that sergeant. I want military police in that FDC now. Arrest him for insubordination. But on the infantry net, the 112th Regiment is beginning to move. Private Hayes is at the front of his platoon. They are not charging. They are walking, stunned, up the silent hill, past the smoking crater that was once Objective Rook. The impossible has happened. The victory, however, is short-lived. This is the moment of escalation. A new sound. A hollow thump, thump, thump from 500 meters behind the vaporized bunker. A secondary German position, untouched by the salvo. It is a heavy mortar pit. A Schwerer Granatwerfer 34, an 81 mm mortar. The German crews, masters of their craft, bracket the advancing infantry. Shells explode, pinning Hayes and his platoon in the open, in the middle of the uncleared barbed wire. The infantry commander's voice, once ecstatic, is now a desperate scream on the radio. Mortars, mortars, we're pinned in the wire. Need fire now. The system immediately reverts to the lie. Colonel Thorne, frantic, takes command. Battery A, adjust fire on those mortars. Forward observer, spot the target. Get me a solution. They are going back. Back to the 30-second warning. Back to the doctrine that fails. It will take 40 seconds, maybe a minute, to find the target. Private Hayes and his platoon will be dead. This is the moment of mastery. Eli Vance, anticipating this, had already calculated the secondary target. On his desk, a second Form 8 chart, pristine, waited. It was labeled, Rook Support. He shoves Lieutenant Hobbs aside, grabbing the microphone. Thorne's voice, Vance, I will have you shot for this. Eli ignores him, his voice now cold, hard, and absolute. All batteries. Execute. Probability. Solution. 2. The guns fire again. A new, chaotic sequence. A new, brilliant calculation. 30 seconds later, as the German mortar crews are reloading, 18 high-explosive shells land simultaneously in their pit. The mortars, the crews, the ammunition cache, all of it is obliterated in a single, violent flash. Total silence returns to the Gustav Line. On the hillside, Private Hayes, covered in mud, stands up. He looks at his platoon. He looks at the silent, smoking hill. The 112th Infantry walks onto Objective Rook. They have not fired a single shot. In the FDC tent, Sergeant Eli Vance carefully removes his headset. He places it on the desk. The tent flap rips open. 2 military policemen, sidearms drawn, step inside. Eli Vance turns to them, his hands slightly raised. He is no longer shaking. I'm ready. Sergeant Eli Vance sits in the back of a military police jeep. His hands are not cuffed, but they might as well be. The 2 MPs in the front seat have not spoken a word. They are simply the mechanism of the system, transporting a piece of broken, insubordinate government property. The jeep bounces violently on the rutted, muddy track, heading back toward Colonel Thorne's command post. Eli is numb. He is not processing the victory. He is processing the consequence. He is an actuary. He has spent his life calculating risk, and he has just run the most catastrophic risk of his career. He did not save his own life. He saved the lives of others by sacrificing his own. In his mind, the calculation is clear. He committed a capital offense, a direct violation of orders during combat. He bypassed his commander. He endangered the entire operation. He expects a court-martial. He expects Leavenworth prison. He has made his peace with it, the quiet, bitter peace of a man who knows he is right, but will be proven wrong by the regulations. The memory of Private Hayes walking, dazed but alive, up that silent hill is his only reward. It will have to be enough. But Eli is unaware of the signal. He is unaware that in the chaotic, electrified moments of his success, the system he defied was already being bypassed by another. The signal did not come from the artillery net. It came from the infantry. Captain Miller, the company commander of the 112th who led the assault, is on his field radio. He is not thinking about artillery doctrine. He is not thinking about Colonel Thorne. He is on his knees in the mud on top of Objective Rook, staring at a crater that defies belief. He is counting his men. He was prepared to lose half his company. He was prepared for 1,500 casualties across the regiment. His own casualty count, 12. 12 men with minor shrapnel wounds or twisted ankles, not 1,500. 12. The number is so absurd, so miraculous, that it breaks his radio discipline. He bypasses the 45th Artillery Group's command net entirely. He does not know what just happened, but he knows Thorn did not do it. He keys his radio directly to the 34th Red Bull Division headquarters. His transmission, breaking all protocol, is a burst of raw ecstatic confusion. Red Bull 6. This is Avalanche 6. We are on the objective. Repeat. We are on objective Rook. The target. It's just gone. It disappeared. I don't know what the 45th did, but the whole hill is gone. The radio operator at Division HQ, a man used to hearing screams for help, keys his mic. Avalanche 6. Say again your casualties. Over. Red Bull 6. Miller's voice cracks. Minimal casualties. Repeat, minimal. We just walked up. It's over. We are on the objective. At Division HQ, a sprawling command post miles to the rear. This report is not a success. It is an anomaly. General Ryder, the division commander, is a hardened man, accustomed to trading lives for yards. He had personally approved Operation Avalanche, knowing its projected cost of 1,500 men. When his G2, his intelligence officer, had confirmed that projection, Ryder had accepted it as the necessary price of breaking the Gustav Line. Now, a report lands on his desk. The 112th is on the objective. The price, 12 wounded. Ryder's first reaction is disbelief. Is this confirmed? Confirmation comes. The 99% discrepancy between projected and actual is not a rounding error. It is a statistical impossibility. It is a data gap so vast it can only mean one thing. It's a new weapon, Ryder says, not to anyone in particular. He turns to his G2, Major Davies. Davies is an analyst, not a combat officer. Like Eli, he is a man of data. He is a pre-war corporate lawyer, and he sees this not as a miracle, but as a new variable that has just rendered all his other data obsolete. Major. Ryder orders, I want to know what this weapon is. I don't care if it's a new bomb, a new rocket, or a new ray gun. Colonel Thorn has been holding out on us. Go to the 45th. Find this weapon. I want it, and I want it by 10. The entire system, from the top down, is now hunting for a solution. But they are looking for the wrong thing. The collision is inevitable. Eli's jeep pulls up to Thorn's tent. The MPs march him inside. Colonel Thorn is standing at his desk, his face purple, a riding crop tapping against his polished boot. He is a man savoring the righteous, bureaucratic revenge he is about to unleash. Sergeant Vance, Thorn begins, his voice low and dangerous. You are an embarrassment to this uniform. You are a. The tent flap rips open again. It is Major Davies, his helmet on, his face a mask of urgent business. He does not salute. He does not wait to be announced. He is an analyst on a mission from God, which is to say, from the General, Colonel Thorn, Davies says, cutting Thorn off mid-sentence. Thorn freezes. He looks at the criminal sergeant. He looks at the G2 Major. Davies doesn't waste time. Major Davies, G2. General Ryder demands a full and immediate report on the new weapon you deployed this morning. The words hang in the air. Eli, standing between the MPs, watches Thorn's face. He sees the rage instantly vanish, replaced by a new, brilliant calculation. The colonel's brain, the brain of a politician, instantly processes the new landscape. This is no longer about discipline. It is, and has only ever been, about success. The air in Colonel Thorn's command tent is thick with a new kind of tension. The MPs flanking Eli Vance are no longer holding a prisoner. They are guarding a prop in a play they do not understand. Colonel Thorn, the politician, does not miss a beat. His rage, which had been seconds from consuming Eli, vanishes. It is replaced by a mask of weary, professional command. He smiles at Major Davies, a smile that shares the burden of high command. Major, Thorn says, his voice a smooth baritone. A new weapon? No, nothing so crude. He gestures dismissively. What you witnessed this morning was a new technique, a novel coordinated fire mission I have been developing in secret. Eli Vance stands invisible, 2 feet away. He watches his life's work, the frantic, terrifying math of the probability salvo being stolen in 10 seconds. Thorne, warming to his new narrative, begins to pace. It's a question of timing, Major, of gunner discipline, of breaking the enemy's rhythm. He uses vague, impressive-sounding words. He does not mention statistics. He does not mention the 30-second flaw. He speaks of will and shock effect. Major Davies, the analyst, frowns. This is not the answer he expected. He is a man of data, and Thorne is giving him poetry. Coordinated fire, Colonel? Davies counters, his eyes narrowing. My reports from the 112th describe the impacts as simultaneous, not coordinated, simultaneous. That is a different problem entirely. Thorne, for the first time, looks cornered. He glances at Eli, his eyes flat and cold. And in that glance, he finds his solution. Exactly, Major. A difficult problem, which is why I had my FDC technicians run the calculations for me. He gestures to Eli, as one would gesture to a wrench. My FDC Sergeant, Vance, here. An excellent technician. He ran the numbers. The theft is now complete. Thorne has demoted Eli from inventor to calculator. Major Davies turns his full attention to Eli. The MP's tense. Davies is not a fool. He sees the immaculate colonel and the exhausted, mud-spattered sergeant. He sees the story that is not being told. Sergeant Vance, Davies asks, his voice sharp and precise. Is that what happened? You just ran the numbers? This is the moment. This is the pivot of Eli's entire life. He is standing between a colonel who will destroy him, a major who wants a simple answer, and two MPs who will take him to Leavenworth. He can speak, he can say, he's lying. It was my idea. He tried to stop me. I defied his order. He can tell the truth. And as he looks at the cold, political calculus in Thorne's eyes, Eli Vance, the actuary, makes the only calculation that saves his life. He realizes the truth does not matter. The army does not need the truth. It needs a story. It needs a hero, and the hero must have rank. Eli Vance gives the smart answer. Not the true one. I just followed the fire plan, sir, Eli says, his voice dead. Davies holds his gaze for a long time, searching. He sees the hollowness, he sees the lie, and he accepts it. Davies is an analyst, but he is also a bureaucrat. He needs a solution he can take back to General Ryder, and a colonel's new doctrine is a much better, more promotable story than a sergeant's insubordination. Davies nods, satisfied. The case is closed. Very well, Colonel. General Ryder will be pleased. We will need a full report on this. Technique. It needs a name. Thorne, now fully in command, places his hand on a map. We're already calling it time on target. That's what it is. All rounds on one target at one time. Time on target. Simple, effective. The probability salvo, the name born of risk and math, is erased. It is replaced by time on target, a name that is sterile, authoritative, and, most importantly, owned by the command structure. The final piece of business is the loose end. Major Davies looks at Eli. Colonel, I'll be taking Sergeant Vance with me. Thorne's mask of appreciation is perfect. Of course, Major. He's earned a rest. Davies turns to Eli, his voice low. Son, you did. Good work. This is the informal thank you. This is the price of his silence. 2 days later, Sergeant Eli Vance, the man who taught the guns to count, receives his new orders. He is no longer under the command of the 45th Artillery Group. He is no longer a chart ruiner. He is transferred, effective immediately. He is sent to a rear echelon mapping unit in Caserta, 50 miles behind the front. He is officially buried. Colonel Eris Thorne finishes his after-action report for Operation Avalanche. He claims he devised and executed the brilliant time-on-target doctrine, saving the 112th Regiment. He is lauded. He will, in all likelihood, receive a promotion and a Silver Star. Sergeant Eli Vance is in the back of another jeep heading south. He is not a prisoner. He is in exile. His war is over. The war for Sergeant Eli Vance did not end in 1E+4. It ended in a quiet, dusty office in Caserta, 50 miles behind the screaming front lines. His new job was not to calculate the probability of death, but to plot the logistics of survival. He was assigned to a mapping unit. His days were spent with ink and vellum, drawing the routes for supply convoys, calculating the tonnage of beans and bullets, the gallons of gasoline. His new world was profoundly, oppressively silent. There were no M2 howitzers firing in the distance. There was no static, no screams on the radio, no colonels demanding his arrest. This was his prison. It was safe, it was warm, and it was a tomb for the part of him that had, for one moment, touched history. He had traded his brilliance for his safety, and the army had accepted the bargain. He was the cog, just as Colonel Thorne had demanded. He did his job. When the war in Europe ended, he was just another face in a sea of uniforms. He was honorably discharged at the rank he had started with. Sergeant. Not a hero. Not a criminal. A simple, statistical survivor. He returned home to Columbus, Ohio. He took a train across a country that had not been bombed, to a state that was flat, predictable, and sane. He stepped off the train, shed his uniform, and put on a gray suit. He returned to the only world that had ever made sense, a world of pure, predictable numbers. Eli Vance got a job at Midwest Mutual Insurance. He became an actuary. For the next 40 years, this was his life. He married a quiet woman named Helen. They had 2 children. He bought a house with a small yard. He was a good husband, a good father. He was, by every measure, a mid-level, successful man. His new life was dedicated to the precise, methodical calculation of risk. He analyzed mortality tables. He calculated the statistical probability of a factory fire in Toledo, a premature frost in the spring, a flood along the Ohio River. His entire professional existence was dedicated to preventing surprises, to softening the blows of the unpredictable, to ensuring that the future arrived in an orderly, manageable fashion. This was the man who, for one night, had embraced total, catastrophic, world-changing risk. This was the man who had gambled the lives of 1,500 men, the success of an entire operation, and his own freedom on a single, brilliant, heretical calculation. The 2 worlds existed side by side, separated by a wall of enforced silence. While Eli Vance calculated insurance premiums, his stolen idea, his probability salvo, was conquering the world. Time on target became the standard. It was studied at the Army's most prestigious school, Fort Sill. It became the bedrock of all Western artillery doctrine. Eli watched it from afar, a ghost observing his own legacy. In 1951, he read a newspaper article about the war in Korea. A journalist, embedded with the 1st Cavalry Division, marveled at the devastating, godlike accuracy of American artillery, which used a technique called time on target to annihilate enemy positions before they could fire. Eli folded the newspaper and finished his coffee. In 1968, he watched a documentary on television about the siege of Khe Sanh in Vietnam. A 4-star general, a man he had never met, stood in front of a map and explained how 2T, a doctrine perfected by a committee of post-war innovators at Fort Sill, was saving countless American lives. The official histories were written. They credited a panel of generals. They credited Colonel Eris Thorne for his critical early field application of the theory. Sergeant Eli Vance's name was nowhere. He never spoke of it. The silence, once imposed by a major, was now a cage he had built himself. Who could he tell? His wife? His children? How could he even begin to explain? I won a battle once, but they gave the credit to someone else? It would sound vain. It would sound petty, the bitter ramblings of an old man who felt unrecognized. The official lie was too big. It was printed in books. It was spoken by generals. His truth was too small. Just a memory of static and a crumpled letter from a terrified boy. And so he carried it. He carried the silent, unrecognized truth of that one probability salvo for 40 years. The man who taught the guns to count lived out his days counting actuarial tables. He died in 1989, a respected actuary from Ohio. The truth of that night, the terror, the defiance, the brilliant, world-changing math was buried with him. The silence was, at last, complete. The silence, once enforced, became permanent. The official history was set in stone. Time on target, the doctrine, was a masterpiece of American military innovation. It was taught at Fort Sill, celebrated in textbooks, and became the foundation of artillery for the next half-century. The official histories credited its development to a committee of brilliant, forward-thinking generals at Fort Sill, and noted its first successful field application by the decisive, innovative Colonel Eris Thorne, who was later promoted, in part, for his clear-eyed command during Operation Avalanche. The story was clean, it was simple, it was inspiring, and it was a lie. For decades, that lie was the only truth. It was printed, filed, and repeated, while the real truth, the truth of a terrified boy, a desperate calculation, and an act of profound insubordination was buried, not just in the ground, but in the official, suffocating silence of a man who returned to Ohio to count numbers. And then, the silence broke. It did not break with a thunderclap. It broke with a quiet, dry cough in a dusty room. The location: the National Archives Annex in College Park, Maryland. The time: decades after Eli Vance's death. The scene: a single military historian, a researcher working on a dry thesis about logistical supply lines in the Italian campaign, sifts through a box. The box is not supposed to be important. It is labeled 34th Division, 45th Group, Uncategorized Field Reports, 1944. It is a box of trash, of supply requisitions, of mundane paperwork that was meant to be burned, but was, by some bureaucratic oversight, saved. The historian, tired after hours of reading about fuel dumps, pulls out a sheaf of papers. Most of it is useless. And then he finds it. It is not a grand report. It is not a metal citation. It is a crumpled, brittle piece of carbon paper, stained with a dark ring of what might have been coffee, or just the mud of the Rapido River. It is a Form 8 firing chart. The paper is a fossil. It is the record of a single moment, preserved in carbon. The historian's eyes scan the page. He is not an artilleryman, but he sees the frantic, brilliant, and impossibly complex calculations. He sees the target, objective rook. He sees the time, 6. And then he sees the words, scribbled in pencil, in a hand that was clearly shaking. Probability salvo. He turns the page, and there, on the back, a second, faster calculation. Probability salvo. Solution 2. This is the Rosetta Stone of the battle. This is the how. This is the moment the war changed. And at the bottom of the page, in hurried, angular script, is the signature. It is not Colonel Eris Thorne. It is not a general from Fort Sill. It is just a name. Sergeant Eli Vance. This is the declassification. This is the vindication, arriving 40 years too late. The credit, finally, is restored. Not to the politician who stole it, not to the committee that studied it, but to the sergeant who did it. The quiet, brilliant mind who looked at the official lie, calculated the real-world cost, and risked a court-martial to prove the system wrong, to save the lives of men he would never even meet. The story of Eli Vance is not unique. That is its most profound and most human tragedy. History is filled with thorns and Vances. It is a structural conflict. The system is designed to reward the thorns, the ones who manage the narrative, who hold the press conferences, who write the after-action reports, and who have the rank to make their version of the truth the only one. The Vances are the cogs. They are the technicians, the specialists, the quiet, brilliant minds who do the actual math, who see the flaw in the machine, and who are expected to do their jobs and keep their mouths shut. This forces us to ask, how many other breakthroughs do we credit to the wrong person? How many life-saving innovations, revolutionary ideas, or moments of pure genius are credited to the powerful, while the true initiator was quietly transferred to a mapping unit or told to burn the logbook? How many acts of profound, necessary courage were filed away as insubordination? The real history of the world, the history of how things actually happen, is not always found in the approved textbooks. It is not chiseled into the statues of the generals. It is found in the margins. It is found on the crumpled carbon copies, in the unauthorized logbooks, and in the frantic, brilliant statistical problems whispered over a radio net, just moments before a great and terrible silence.